up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for March 14th, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Feel Good Friday edition of the podcast. Happy Pi Day to everyone out there if you celebrate. We got a big show today, so before we get into it, let's do some quick housekeeping. Be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mott on Twitter and TikTok. On Instagram, at PhillyJimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mott, and continue to spread the word as we grow this thing. Lots of good things on the horizon. Been playing with, obviously, some new segments. Have a couple different things outside, specifically tomorrow, lined up. A couple interviews. So stay tuned for that. But most importantly, again, continue to spread the word. Today is the last day to get your fan vote ballot in for the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame induction ceremony. The ballots are out. Today was the deadline. So if you want to get your voice heard and have a shot to win 2 free VIP tickets to the ceremony in November, go to the link in the description, fill out your ballot, and if your ballot most closely resembles the actual induction class, you will win those 2 free VIP tickets to the ceremony at Live Casino in November. But again, time is running out for that. And if you need help with the possible candidates, there's a PDF in there as well with their bios.
It's time for Fridays with AI, where we ask AI to rewrite Philly sports history. Every Friday only on This Day in Philly Sports History.
That's right. It is time for Fridays with AI. And if you missed last week's episode, it's something new we started at the beginning of March on Fridays. We ask AI to rewrite Philly sports history. Excuse me. I got the idea from a tweet back around the Super Bowl. Somebody said they asked ChatGPT to simulate a alternate reality where the Eagles did not draft Jalen Hurts, and it was very bleak and dark. But I was like, we could have a lot of fun with this. So here we are, our second Fridays with AI. And last week we did the dream matchup between the 2017 Eagles versus this year's Super Bowl champion Eagles. And depending on the quarterback, that's who won the game. And AI is very high on Carson Wentz, and we'll leave it at that. But the Carson Wentz-led team did beat this year's team, where the Nick Foles team didn't do much against this defense. But it got me thinking for this week. Since AI is so high on Carson Wentz, I always wondered what would have happened if he didn't get hurt. It's one of the biggest what-ifs in Philly sports history. If Carson Wentz did not tear his ACL Week 14 versus the Ram that year, would the Eagles still have gone on to win the Super Bowl? Would he have still been the dynamic quarterback going into year 3 as he was that year? So I figured let's ask AI to create an alternate reality where Carson Wentz never tears his ACL. And as I mentioned, AI is very high on Carson Wentz. So if he didn't tear his knee, AI says that they would have finished that season 14-2. They probably wouldn't have dropped the one game that they did. Carson would have ended the regular season with 4,600 passing yards, over 40 touchdowns, just 8 interceptions, would have won the MVP. But most importantly, what would have happened during that playoff run? Easily beat the Falcons, not the struggle that it was with Nick Foles. And then again, completely dominates the Vikings, throwing for 325 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a 41-17 win versus the Vikings to get the Eagles to the Super Bowl. And they expected him to outduel the GOAT Tom Brady in the Super Bowl as well. Super Bowl 52, Eagles win 38-33. Carson throws for 310 passes, 3 touchdowns, wins the Super Bowl MVP. Not far-fetched. I'm okay with it. But as we know, when Carson came back from the injury, took him a while, then he was all up in his feelings because of Nick Foles, asked Dougie P and the coaching staff to change the playbook, all that craziness. So had he not hurt his ACL, what would have happened? Well, they come back in 2008 with another MVP-like season, but they lose in the NFC Championship game to Drew Brees and the Saints. Again, maybe not so far-fetched if he didn't tear his ACL. This is where it gets crazy, though. In 2019, he leads them to Super Bowl 54 and loses a shootout to Patrick Mahomes. Again, AI really loves Carson Wentz. Then they come back in 2020, go back to the Super Bowl, gets his revenge in Super Bowl 55 against Patrick Mahomes, and all of a sudden the talk around the NFL is Mahomes versus Wentz. Who is the best quarterback in the league? And it's really, that is the discussion. And they specifically said this in the report I got. They talk about it on sports talk shows all over the country, national shows, Mahomes versus Wentz. But it gets better. So 2021, finally Wentz suffers a pretty major injury, gets a high ankle sprain halfway through the season. Is not able to really come back from that. And they're bounced by the Rams in the playoffs that year. Rams obviously went on to win the Super Bowl. But then 2022, Super Bowl 57, the same Super Bowl the Eagles did make it to with Jalen Hurts. AI thinks Super Bowl 57, the Eagles make it back to the Super Bowl, this time playing the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Eagles beat the Bengals. They said they still get A.J. Brown, and there is such chemistry between A.J. and Carson that it's phenomenal. And A.J.'s loving it. Everybody else is loving it. Then in 2023, they go back to the Super Bowl, lose Super Bowl 58 to the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, further extending that rivalry. And we kind of stopped there because it didn't give anything for the 2024 season, I guess, because it's still in AI speak processing it. But overall, AI thinks if Carson Wentz did not get hurt, he would have won 3 Super Bowl titles, 1 Super Bowl MVP, 2 league MVPs. And if he remained completely healthy, then the rest of his career would have probably thrown for 50,000 plus yards and over 350 touchdowns. He was a clutch performer in the playoffs. A lot of those playoff games, as I was reading through it, he led them on late drives to win games. So just clutch, especially in the Super Bowl. He has that budding rivalry with Mahomes. It kind of impacts Patrick Mahomes' legacy somewhat. But he was on a Hall of Fame trajectory, according to AI, if he did not take out his or tear his ACL against the Rams that year. The Eagles still draft Jalen Hurts, who was a good backup for Carson Wentz. Ended up trading him to the Patriots, where he had some success. Wasn't what he was now. Got them to the playoffs, but did not win a Super Bowl. But Dougie P becomes a legend, an offensive mastermind. As they say, one of the best coaches to ever coach if Carson Wentz did not tear his ACL. So what are your thoughts on this? Personally, I think the knee injury definitely changed him. I don't necessarily think that the knee injury made his ego and just mental makeup as fragile as it was. I think it always was. As soon as there was adversity. But according to this scenario with Dougie P and Carson Wentz, there wouldn't have been much adversity for Carson Wentz, and maybe he would have kind of grown into that leadership role. I think this might be a bit far-fetched. I still think he could have been successful if he didn't tear that knee. I think the knee really hurt him, and the fact that they went on to win the Super Bowl just compounded the entire thing. But that is Fridays with AI. AI is very high on Carson Wentz. We will take a shift from Carson Wentz and the Eagles for next week. But what do you think? I think that leads in, obviously, to Friday's question of the day now. Do the Eagles win the Super Bowl if Carson Wentz did not get hurt? I think it's a fair, legitimate question because they were able to catch that lightning in a bottle. They certainly seem like they would have, but would Carson Wentz have been able to go toe-to-toe with Tom Brady, like AI says that they would have? 267-495-8531. That is the Back to the Future voice and text line. Get that. Anything else Philly sports related off your chest? Let me know your thoughts on Fridays with AI. I think AI may have had a little bit too much to drink last night. Very high, like I said, on Carson Wentz, but who knows? I mean, he certainly, before the knee injury, was absolutely playing like a guy who could have done all this had he continued to get the experience and remain healthy. So maybe it's not that far-fetched. Maybe AI is smarter than what I'm giving it credit for, which is kind of scary. But question of the day, would the Eagles have won the Super Bowl if Carson Wentz did not tear his ACL? Let me know your thoughts on that. All right, back to reality now. Flyers with a 4-3 shootout win over the Tampa Bay Lightning yesterday, ending their 5-game losing streak. Bobby Brink had 2 goals. Matvei Mishkov with the game-winning shootout goal to give the Flyers the victory. They now have 15 games left in their season, currently slotted for, if everything falls the way it should, the 8th pick. And once we get there, I'll explain it. But I think if you thought the NBA lottery system was screwy because it's so secretive, the NHL one is not secretive, and it's even more confusing. So I'll get into that. So I don't think from 8th they can get much higher than 4th, I believe, or 3rd. But either way, they're actually still in the thick of the wild card race, 6 points back of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Like I said, 15 games left. It's going to be a tough one, but we'll see where it goes. And speaking of lottery chasing, Sixers are in action tonight against the Pacers. No Tyrese Maxey, no Paul George. That's a good thing, as they currently are 5.5 games back of the 10th play-in spot, or 10th place, which is the play-in spot, with 17 games left to play. Not completely out of the realm of possibility that they can get it, but very, very close to being eliminated from that. So they're 5.5 games back of that. They currently have the 6th pick, which, again, if everything falls the way it should, that's a good thing for the Sixers. They're a half game up on the Raptors for that, but they're a half game back of the Nets for the 5th spot. So it looks like those are the 3 teams we're going to really be focusing on. They could move up higher than 5th, although it's going to take a lot to do that. So we'll have an updated standings list. Hopefully the Sixers are able to kind of slot into that 5th spot as we go on. All right, Phillies news. And before we get into that, let's recap yesterday's question of the day. It was the anniversary of the Lance Parrish free agent signing. So I asked you, who was the worst free agent in Phillies history? And everyone was all over the board with this. Most people tied for first with 23% was either Jake Arrieta or Lance Parrish, but a couple votes for Adam Eaton. Somebody wrote in Andy Ashby, which I completely forgot how horrible he was when he came back to the Phillies after being so good with the Padres. Taijuan Walker got some love in this one. I still think he's a mole for the Mets, and if they can get rid of him, I will gladly take it. Danny Tartabull got some mention. And a couple people write in Hunter Pence and Von Hayes. However, those were trades. But thank you, as always, for participating in the question of the day. Today's question, do the Eagles win the Super Bowl with Carson Wentz as their quarterback back in 2017? All right, so Jimmy Rollins and Ed Wade will be inducted into the Phillies Wall of Fame. I'm actually okay with both of these, and I really wish the Phillies would not do somebody every year, but these 2 guys certainly, I think, are deserving. Rollins, for obvious reasons, MVP, helped lead them to a World Series, all-time hits leader. He is a fringe Hall of Fame player. So I think this is a no-brainer. Probably would have been nice to see him go in by himself, let the spotlight be all about him. But again, I'm okay with Ed Wade because Ed Wade, yes, he was sort of cheap and everybody kind of complained about some of the moves he made, some of the trades. But he was oversaw the team from a scouting point of view when they drafted guys like Cole Hamels, Jimmy Rollins, Ryan Howard, Chase Utley. So he really had a big hand in building that 2008 championship team. Pat Gillett gets the credit because he was the one that was the GM at the time and was the one making the moves to get the key pieces, like he went after Jason Worth, Shane Victorino, and guys like that. But Ed Wade really was responsible for the core of that team and drafting them. Drafted Chooch out of high school. So I think well-deserved. I personally would have loved to have seen Jimmy Rollins have the spotlight all to himself. But usually I complain about who the Phillies put into the Wall of Fame because it's sometimes a stretch and a reach. But I'm okay with both of these guys getting into the Phillies Wall of Fame. On the field, the bats were hot again for the Phillies. Schwarber finally hit a home run, and he crushed it. If you can see a video of Schwarber's home run from yesterday, absolute bomb. Make sure your sound is turned up for it. Trey Turner hit leadoff. He led off the game with a home run. Still no word on which way Topper is going to go. If I had to bet, I think he's going to probably attempt to put Trey Turner there, and we will see Kyle Schwarber in the leadoff spot by Memorial Day. But we'll see. Max Kepler hit a home run. All of the starters, the regulars, I should say, seem to have played well yesterday, which is a good sign with a couple weeks left now toward the season starting. Christopher Sanchez was on the mound, looked outstanding. 5 strikeouts in 4 innings. It seems like he's got his velocity up without really impacting his control, which is a good thing. So get me to opening day. That's the next benchmark on the calendar. Get me to opening day. The Eagles did make some signings yesterday, as I kind of expected. They went bargain shopping, signed Josh Uche, and I'm okay with this. He signed him to a 1-year deal. This is another one of those in Howie we trust, low risk, high reward type signings. He's a former second rounder out of Michigan, so I am familiar with him. Interesting kind of little backstory to this. Being a Michigan guy, he looked up to Brandon Graham and wanted to kind of model his game after Brandon Graham. Now he has a shot to actually replace Brandon Graham on the Eagles, so it's a pretty cool story. I'll be rooting for Uche, but again, this isn't going to move the needle. This isn't going to make me jump up and down and do backflips, but we saw what happened with Zach Bond and Mekhi Becton, how he does have a track record of making these kinds of signings work. So it's low risk, high reward. I'm okay with it. They signed tight end Harrison Bryant. I don't know if he's going to get much playing time unless he's going to be the backup to someone. He's a special teams guy. Again, not moving the needle whatsoever. And then Adoree Jackson they signed from the Giants, which is an interesting name. He's an 8-year vet. I don't know what the plan is. Maybe he's coming in to push these younger guys to play better during camp and come in and have a shot at the starting cornerback role. This also, though, could be, so keep an eye on this. This could be one of those moves that as training camp opens and guys start getting hurt, that Howie might be able to schneid his way into a draft pick or something, because currently as it is, I wouldn't imagine that with the draft capital they invested in those guys, that this Adoree Jackson is going to take over for Keely Ringo, or even Cooper DeJean or whoever. I like Cooper in the slot, but Adoree Jackson can play the slot too. But I don't think, and maybe this is, like I said, just a way to push Keely and some of those younger guys. But don't be surprised if Adoree Jackson ends up being sort of a trade thing in the preseason when guys start to get injured and teams see that they have needs. But that's all we got for the Eagles. We'll continue to monitor them as they go through bargain bin shopping for free agency. And then Big 5 news, Temple lost yesterday. Their season probably is basically over. Villanova lost. Their season likely is over too. They may have a shot at the NIT. Kyle Neptune's career might be over with the Villanova Wildcats. And Fran Dunphy's career is officially over as LaSalle lost to St. Joe's yesterday. So really, in the Big 5 now, we have the Drexel women playing Townsend this afternoon at 2:30. And then St. Joe's taking on Dayton tonight at 7:30, I believe that game is. So all we got left are the St. Joe's Hawks and the Drexel Women Dragons to root for. March Madness sucks when there's no Philly teams in it, but I digress. Be sure to check out my boys at the Clashing Conferences podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Also at clashingconferences.com. They have a lot of good things happening with their fan network. You can get your voice heard as well. Go to the website, see what they have to offer. Check out the podcast, but go see how you can get involved and have your voice heard with the clashingconferences.com. And then go to Philly Goat. What can I say about Philly Goat that I haven't said already? Trust me, just go scroll through their website. You'll see at least 5 things that you want to buy. And when you buy them, you can save 10% by using the promo code Jim Montgomery. So go to Philly Goat, get geared up for the summertime. Tons of t-shirts. They have the canvas loafers. They have the slides for you right now. If you're a golfer, they have golf shirts. So go. You won't be disappointed. Go to phillygoat.com. Be sure to use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off of your order. All right. Since the St. Joe's Hawks are the only team left, and it is March Madness, let's go back to 1991 today. And on this day in 1991, the St. Joe's Hawks pulled off the biggest upset in St. Joe's history, probably the biggest upset in Big Five history, possibly one of the biggest upsets in NCAA history, when they shocked the number 1 overall seed and number 1 ranked team in the country, the DePaul Blue Demons, 49-48 in the second round of the NCAA tournament. John Smith hit a layup with 3 seconds left to give the Hawks the win. The Hawks were coached by Jimmy Lynam. Yes, Jim Lynam, before he coached the Sixers and before he was on Sixers pre- and post-game show, he coached the St. Joe's Hawks. His team used stout defense to shut down the Blue Demons, held them scoreless for the final 6 minutes and 28 seconds of the game. They also held All-American Mark Aguirre to a career-low 8 points. You might remember Mark Aguirre from the Detroit Pistons. But it set up a Sweet 16 matchup with Boston College, which the Hawks also won 42-41. They would eventually lose to Indiana, who would be the national champion that year in the Elite Eight. But on this day, back in 1981, St. Joe's pulled off the biggest win in school history when they shocked the DePaul Blue Demons 49-48 in the NCAA second round, moving on to the Sweet 16, where they actually would make that Elite Eight run before bowing out to eventual national champion Indiana. See, Big Five used to be fun. Finally, the Women's Big Five Hall of Fame spotlight. Today, we're spotlighting Jewel Clark from Penn. She went there from 2001 to 2004. She was the 2004 Ivy and Big Five Player of the Year. She was 3-time All-Ivy and 3-time Big Five. She was a 2-time Ivy League champion. Now, this is cool because both of those Ivy League championships were the first 2 NCAA tournaments in Penn's history. So Jewel Clark played a big role in getting Penn's women to the NCAA tournament for the first time. As when she graduated, she was second on the Penn's all-time scoring list, third in rebounding. She is in the Penn Athletics Hall of Fame, elected to the Big Five Hall of Fame in 2011. And a pretty cool stat for Jewel, in her first ever game, a Big Five matchup against St. Joe's, all she did was drop 21 points. So she was a star from the very beginning. She could play all 5 positions. Did try out for the WNBA. Didn't work out. She currently teaches down in Baltimore. But Jewel Clark is today's Women's Big Five Hall of Fame spotlight. One of the best to ever do it at Penn. Helped lead the Quakers to their first ever NCAA tournament berth. And she did it on back-to-back years. They pulled some tough draws, though, in those tournament, including UConn. So if you know anything about women's college basketball, you don't want to be playing UConn. But Jewel Clark, today we salute you. On this day in 1981, St. Joe's beat DePaul 49-48, knocking the number 1 seed out of the tournament, the number 1 team in the country, en route to an Elite Eight run for the St. Joe's Hawks, coached by Jimmy Lynam, Philadelphia guy, played basketball here, coached here, now still does TV here. So biggest win in St. Joe's history happened on this day. We'll have more on the Eagles, Phillies, Sixers, and Flyers as we get the news tomorrow. It is Fridays with AI. Let me know your thoughts. Does AI love Carson Wentz way too much? But the question of the day, though, in all seriousness, do the Eagles still win the Super Bowl in 2017 if Carson doesn't tear his ACL? We'll have another Fridays with AI next week. Hopefully AI goes to bed a little bit earlier next week and doesn't overvalue Carson there. But this has been This Day in Philly Sports History for March 14th, 2025. Happy Pi Day. Go have yourselves a feel-good Friday. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.